We're going to talk about a very interesting subject. I spotted this morning about workplace surveillance methods. And you guys know, of course, as you travel all across North America, that trucking companies, that the way they keep up with you is through the electronic logging device. You know, that measures the hours of service, the time on the clock. You guys know about the federal regulation there. The 14-hour duty day, 11-hour driving cycle, and, of course, about the cameras that are on board the trucks, the outward-looking cameras, watching what you're doing up on the roadway ahead of you, and the inward-facing cameras that go off if there is an adverse driving event. If you got to hit the brakes hard, if you got to swerve, maybe to avoid hitting something that's up in front of you. You know what's going on there. But a new story that is out that caught my attention early this morning is that workplace surveillance methods have become significantly more common and sophisticated in recent years. And there is a shocking spike-like practice or something far more routine than most people realize. And great to have my guest on the program to talk about this, an expert in the field all across North America, Dr. Jayne Gardner, is on with us. And, Doctor, I want to welcome you to the show. You're live across North America. How are you?
Hi, Mark. Glad to be here.
I appreciate you spending the time with us. And what a fascinating story, to say the very least. Let's set this up, a little background about you, since you're a new voice to the program, and we'll get into the conversation. Welcome. What do you do?
Great. Yes, thank you for giving me a moment. I am a business strategist and help companies raise their profit levels as well as their productivity. And really, this is such a great article for this because it's going against what I do for a living.
Oh, goodness sakes. Okay. So you were very surprised about this, I would imagine, right, when you first read this. What was your initial reaction?
I had no idea. And, destroying trust, Mark, that goes against human nature. This is not going to pay off for them.
Okay, so you're thinking that there may be more of a pushback, say, among the working population. This could be any industry that if somebody was under the impression that they are being maybe monitored or spied upon or looked upon, that it might create some concerns about a person that may be experiencing it? That's safe to say?
Yeah, it destroys the trust level. And when you don't have good trust, your culture becomes toxic. And when nobody trusts each other, fear develops. And when employees are under a fear control, they can't think right, they don't produce as good, they will not be as good an employees as if you treated them with respect.
Someone said, Doctor, that we are seeing an increase in this kind of activity due to the fact that so many people are working remotely, that the surveillance methods have gone up, that bosses want to know more as to what you're doing at home. Is this in reaction to maybe a COVID reaction to this, in your estimation?
This could be something, I'm sure it's to do with remote because that's increased so much lately. But mainly, I'd like to give a shout out to truckers. I appreciate what you guys do. I'd love to give you a couple of tips on how to handle this situation.
Sure, absolutely. What would you say?
Well, here's the first thing is, I would keep a log and I would do some things to clear this up. So first of all, I would want to know what I'm being measured for as far as raises and evaluations. So get a clear picture from your employer. What are they measuring that's going to benefit you? And know what you're being held accountable for, first of all. Second of all, if I was in this situation and my employer was doing this, I would look for brushing up my resume, doing a side hustle. And if you can't do that, because I know a lot of people just can't leave their job, I want you to become indispensable to them so they can't possibly in any way think of firing you.
When you mention being indispensable, Doctor, does that mean maybe offering to do extra services, maybe say if a boss needs help in this area, maybe go over there, do it voluntarily, in other words, right? Maybe to strengthen that idea that you're valuable for the organization.
Go
What do you say?
Go to your manager and say, what can I do to make your job easier? What can I do to become a better employee? What can I do to help you? Stop being quiet, because just griping about this and talking about it with each other is not going to change anything. Volunteer for everything you can, just to show him that he can't fire you. You're doing too many things that are just opposite of anybody you'd want to fire.
You know, years ago, many people would go to work for a company and they'd spend, 40 years at a company and get the proverbial gold watch and then the retirement party and a cake that tasted bad, and then they were sent on their way out the door. But times have really changed, right? I mean, you're finding that more people are not willing to sit still. In other words, for that 40-year gold watch, that they want to find more opportunities, number one. And then number two, to turn that question around a little bit more, and maybe that's the reason why, since we've got such a mobile workforce, that companies are putting in this technology saying, we've got a lot of turnover going on. People are coming and going. We've got to keep tabs on that. Is it kind of a double-edged sword?
Well, it is, but there is no guarantee anymore. We used to think if we did our job and came to work and did what we were told every day, we would get the gold watch. Now, you can't count on that. Employers are just not any guarantee for you being employed tomorrow. So you really have to hook up and do things that will make them where you're an invaluable employee.
Okay, goodness sakes, and that means, I would imagine, more open communication. Is that one of the critical essence points right now, that maybe there wouldn't be such a need for all this kind of technology if there was more direct one-on-one communication from those that are in the C-suite, say down to, in air quotes, you can't see it at radio, but air quotes, on the factory floor, so to speak? How do you see it?
I think what you're saying is there's a need for more direct communication. Go to your person you report to and tell them tell them what you need to feel safe. There's so many things I want to tell your audience, but the other thing is I want to give them an idea on how to release some of the stress, because this really builds up to where you can't do your job if you're frustrated all the time with having to deal with stuff like this. So I want to teach them something I think might even be fun for them.
Got a great conversation going on right now. This very minute, Dr. Jayne Gardner is on with us, and we're talking about a very interesting story about what companies are doing when it comes to monitoring what you are doing out there on the road. And Dr. Gardner, thank you very much. Can folks maybe go to your website and read up on what you do? Are you on social media? Can they reach you by phone? What's the best way to find you?
Yeah, go to my website. I've got lots written about this. Dr. Jayne, DrJayne, at drjaynegardner.com. You have plenty of answers for free right there in front of you. But today, I just wanted to give truckers a way to release this pent-up emotion that this has caused. Okay,
I'll say, what would you recommend?
Yeah. First of all, this has to be private. I'm not talking about doing this in front of anybody. But what I'm going to suggest you do on your next truck stop, do a scream stop. And this is what I want you to do. First of all, sit there, let the motor run so nobody can hear you, and figure out what it is that best describes how you feel, whether it's frustrated, angry, pissed off, exploded, whatever word you find. And then I want you to tell that person you'd like to tell, as if they were sitting next to you, how you feel about it. Thirdly, I want you to scream it out as loud as you can. Get it out.
Okay. That would be a great stress reliever, but make sure nobody's within earshot.
Yeah,
right? That's
it's private. Yeah.
Critical point. Okay, absolutely. And do you find that that is often a great stress reliever? That folks may say, well, things are maybe a little bit out of my control, and if I just kind of think about it and then, shout it out, scream it out, then it brings down that stress level. Does it release maybe a sense of calm after you do that? What goes on? What the brain?
Yes, research shows that the body changes. It calms down. It drives your heart rate down, and you actually secrete a hormone called oxytocin, not to be confused with oxycodone, but oxytocin is a connection molecule. It's a great warm feeling that comes over you after you release emotion. Because if you keep that emotion pent up in you, Mark, it makes you sick.
Oh,
and when you finally do go home to your family, you're not a person a lot of people want to relate to if you're all pent up with all this emotion. Get it out. This is a great way to just get it out. I even ask companies to put in a scream room in their companies.
Oh, wow. What kind of response do you get? Are they saying...
I've got them doing it now. They have to soundproof it, but they do it.
That's very good.
I know.
Absolutely. What a great idea, because, again, releasing that stress of the workplace environment can really be quite something, especially when, folks hear about things like what are called tattleware. And talk about that. Tattleware. Is this where that the boss is measuring the keystroke activity, the mouse activity of a company computer? I didn't even know they could do stuff like that. What's going on there?
They can. Yeah, they can. And not only do they measure it, they're not telling you. And they're determining, quote, how much they think you work. And they're basing raises, they're basing whether they keep you or fire you on something you don't even know they're doing.
Oh.
So that's why it puts you under so much stress when an article comes out like this and you get it, that you're being watched. You really are. It's a lot of stress.
I'm reading from an article here that there are ways maybe to get around this, that there's a gadget out there that will actually jiggle the mouse and make it seem like you're diligently working. And again, fascinating technology from people that came up with this. You think about that for a second, that there's ways, sounds like there's workarounds with alleviating a lot of the stress. Sounds like.
I'm glad that there is, but basically it's still about human connection. So take a deep breath, realize that you do want to work in a trust environment. And Mark, did you know that high-trust companies actually pay more money to their employees because high-trust companies are more profitable and people produce more? So really, they're not doing themselves any favor to build up this level of toxicity that everybody's going to be upset about.
Do you find, Doctor, that a lot of the companies that are most successful here, that they embrace the platform of trust, but also embrace diversity, inclusion across all platforms in their work environment? Everybody's got a voice in it, in other words? That help with the retention?
Yeah, I agree. And, diversity, inclusion, but it's all based on trust, because if you don't, decide that you're going to include people, you have lost trust. It's almost like a marriage, where one person has betrayed that other person. It's hard to reestablish it. It's almost like something is broken after that.
When you look at this overall, that you're looking at the stress level of an organization, are you going in and you are saying to a company, okay, this is a problem, monitoring may not work, monitoring may work here? Hey, what I'm driving at is this kind of like a light bulb moment for those organizations, that they maybe didn't realize the extent of what is going on inside of their company?
Many times they don't realize, and a lot of times, employees are taking advantage and wasting time and everything, but that's on the employer to not find that out and have someone measuring, having just so the employee knows what they're measuring to say, are you a good employee or not? I just believe that the stress level of an organization impacts not only whether we're happy or not, but their productivity, their profitability comes. Happiness produces more than disgruntled employees.
When you look at workplace surveillance and you find that there are numerous ways for companies to monitor employee activity with cameras, or maybe monitoring keystrokes and things like that, do you find that it is often the result of a boss that does not delegate, that the boss is micromanaging, wants to know everything about the company, sure, but can it go overboard with something like that? How important is that in the C-suite to have the trust to begin with those that are working there? How do you see it?
It's the same in the C-suite. And, and so many of those guys, though, they say they're delegating, but they're really abdicating. They're really saying, okay, you take this problem and come back to me in 3 months and tell me it's solved. Well, that is not helpful. You've got to check in with those people and say, how's it going? How can I help you?
One of the most best success stories that I've ever heard of the trucking industry, Dr. Gardner, is those companies that have like driver advocacy groups that drivers that are say on the road, but they're also representing the voice of the rank and file, those that are working inside of the organization, and then they will go to the management and the C-suite and say, okay, we've got this going on and this going on. It opens up that communication process. Do we need more of that? Maybe workplace or worker advocacy groups to make it less of a toxic environment these days? How do you see it?
I love that. I love that idea. And we just need to have employers that care about their people. Great story. One of my CEOs I work with found out that one of his employees that he had hired really messed up on a big deal. She had messed up on a big sale. And so he called her and said, I want to take you to lunch. And she told me, I thought I was going to be fired. Well, he took her out to lunch and he said, listen, I'm responsible for this too. I shouldn't have given this to you. You weren't ready. Let's sit down and talk about what you can do differently and what I can do differently. So owning the responsibility is showing your vulnerability, shows people building trust right there in front of you.
All right, Doctor, I'm out of time. Got to get ready to wrap it up, and thank you very much. What a great conversation. Dr. Jayne Gardner on with us, and one more time, Doctor, where can folks find you? Up on the web. I got about 30 seconds. Where can they go?
Well, Dr. Jayne, D-R-J-A-Y-N-E, Dr. Jayne at drjaynegardner.com. Thanks for having me on the show.